It gives me great pleasure to welcome our guest today, Yogesh Maitreya, who embodies the essence of, creating something that he wants to see more of in the world. And he's an author, he's a poet, a translator, and a publisher. And I will read a very short bio before we hear from the man himself. He is, as I said, a poet, writer, a cultural critic, and a translator. He's a PhD scholar at TIS Mumbai. He has published three books: The Bridge of Migration, which is a poetry book, Flowers on the Grave of Caste, which is short stories, and Of Oppressor's Body and Mind, which is literary essays. This is also another book that I'm reading from, which is a very interesting book, and we'll hear about it very soon from him. He has also translated three Marathi books. He has contributed more than 100 essays on literature, language, and music across various print and online platforms. And he is the founder of Panther's Paw publication that publishes only Dalit Bahujan authors. Hello, Yogesh, and welcome to our show.
Hello, Nandini. Thank you very much for having me here. And I'm glad to speak about my journey and what I do with the people from that part of the world. So, yes.
Yes, absolutely. For us, it's, people from this part of the world don't really always get to know through mainstream media all the wonderful things that people are doing that may not necessarily make it into popular news. So we are very, very happy to highlight what you're doing. And as a publisher, my first opening question to you was, I know publishing is a very hard business, and it's not easy. More and more as perhaps the mind space of a reader is not that easy to capture with all the other distractions and entertainment options. So, was there an inciting event, or was there a series of events that led you to take up this quite a difficult task of being, of founding a publishing house?
Thank you, Nandini. I think, as I always, talk about when people ask about what is publishing or like how I come into the publishing. While we grow up, nobody thinks of becoming a publisher. Like when we ask a child what he or she wants to become, so they sometimes they say scientist or doctor, or they want to be engineer, or they want to be all these things which which the world has introduced to them as a popular culture, or which is
Right.
popular also among the children, but nobody dreams of becoming a publisher. So the people who across the world, like who, especially the publisher who are we call niche publisher, who come into publishing with a certain kind of ideology, when they are affected by that ideology,
Yes.
when they very much are influenced, not only influenced, but then that influence become a force in their life. That ideology becomes a force in their life. So in my life, this ideology, if it has to come, I say that it is Ambedkarism, which basically forced me to, or which is a force behind me becoming a publisher. Now, obviously, like to talk about Ambedkarism as an ideology or theory for emancipation, it's a big thing. But I would like to just say one of the aspects of Ambedkarism is intellectual production. So, in
The
any
intellectual protection.
production,
Production.
intellectual
Intellectual
production.
production. All right.
So, an intellectual production can be of many forms. Like it can be in terms of art, visual arts, or music, or visual cinematic production, any kind of forms of art. But basically, since I grew up in a basti where Ambedkarism was a almost a everyday thing. Although not all of us did not have the full understanding of that in terms of at the level of intellectual or the ideology as an intellectualism, but we had something called a culture. That culture also led us to read Ambedkar's thought in a more rigorous way. So when you
Right.
do that, you become conscious about your position, your your roots in the society, and then when you know who you are, you try to especially when you know that you are someone in the society who is always affected negatively by the history of this particular nation or the society at large, then
Right.
you take a position in order to change that situation.
Sure.
Now,
And if I may ask, then you started it in 2016, right?
yes, right, that's right.
Before that, you were already writing. You had already
Yes,
you were already writing. You were looking for publishers.
yes, I have been writing since 2008, but that was my beginning. When I by the end of 2014 or 16, I started writing more seriously about the issues around me. So
Right.
and I started to also understand that like what I think and what I want to write, and basically what I write. It is very difficult for people like me to get it published uh, uncompromisingly. So for me, like my choice to write in English was something very much political, and I wanted to write in this language. But this is not my mother tongue. English is not my mother tongue, and I this is something a third language for me. But it was my decision. It was a conscious decision because I wanted to tell my stories beyond the society. And
Mm.
the first thing came in my mind is like if I write in English, like I can share my stories with a society where English is spoken. And for me, I had an idea that almost all the world speaks English. So that was a very naive and stupid idea. But then English was always around us, and I thought that English is a foreign language. Foreign language means something which is spoken outside the country. So I wanted to write in this language. I wanted to, so I started reading basically this. And when it comes to India, I found that English literature, whatever English literature which is produced, also the translated in English from across the languages, it is more a literature by Savarna writers.
Mm.
Now it is a very obvious fact. Like one can just see, observe, and come to the conclusion that English literature in India is very much a Savarna literature. Now, where
Right.
do I fit in that? My position, or basically my stories are somewhere antithesis to what they produce, what they write. Basically, my literary imagination is something very much antithesis to their literary imagination. So, who would like to publish stories of people like me? And especially when I mean, browsed a little bit about what is publishing, how many authors have been published in these languages, who are the famous writers published in English or have been writing in English, and I found there is a total vacuum into that particular domain of English literature and Dalit writers.
No, I
So
absolutely agree. You know, Yogesh, I studied English literature in Kolkata. And today, when I was reading going through your books and just trying to recollect what I had studied, it's so interesting that not through my curriculum, but just through the environment I was in, I remember being greatly influenced by this book called Roots by Alex Haley, which is
yes,
about, the slave trade, basically,
yes.
and how inhumane that whole system of oppression was. And I was just thinking, I'm in my late teens, early 20s, and I'm so underexposed to what is happening in my own country, right? And the systems of oppression that continue. And what you said about the vacuum is very true because um, I don't know whether it's only the colonial sort of hangover or it's also a deliberate silencing of Dalit voices that kind of literature, the kind of literature that I'm seeing now that, for instance, you're putting out and others are putting out, was not easily accessible. And there was no classroom discussion on these issues. Yes, we were discussing ideology, we were discussing philosophy, Western thought, or even like Vedanta thought and all of that. But we were not discussing the crux of Indian society, which is so centered around caste. So, what I think you have done and what you're doing is, of course, it is of value to the Dalit Bahujan authors, but I think it's also of equal value to everybody who needs to educate themselves. And as you were saying, that there is this vacuum and there is this disconnect. One of your stories, which I had read in this Flowers on the Grave of Caste, the story called Caste, the short story, where there is a lot of rhetoric from one of the protagonists. I think her name is Gargi, and she says the right thing, she's in the liberal sort of space, but when she's actually confronted by the reality of what it means to be someone who actually is manually cleaning human waste, she can't take it, she recoils, right? And that, I think, is such a beautiful idiom of how actually society functions with blinkers on, right? So, in your publishing journey, do you think books can actually change hearts and minds?
Yes, Nandini, because I believe that what I was like trying to say earlier, that all the Dalit writers, whoever they are writing from, like wherever they are writing from, whichever language they are writing from, basically they are trying to create a consciousness where which is basically anti-caste in its nature. Now, it's about it applies to any terrain in any society, any soil, like any in any geopolitical situation, given any kind of religion, because India is a caste society, and I think my hunch is that uh, although like we have acquired the anatomy of humans, somewhere when we confront someone with the reality of their caste, we suddenly act as non-human. So, and that is the reason when Baba Sahib said that caste society is a sick society. It's chronically sick. So until and unless we try to understand, introspect the kind of caste consciousness we inherited from our ancestors or from the society while we are growing up. I don't think so that we can ever be able to deal with it. So
Yes.
now, when one of the functions of caste is to discommunicate, to create a void of communication between two people, between two genders, and between two castes. Now, when we say that we are producing literature, we are reading stories across different languages or of different people, it means that we are actually challenging that function of caste. We are challenging it, and also we are breaking it. So when we read stories of each other, we try to empathize with each other, because no matter
Yes.
the kind of stories we write, or no matter what kind of stories we read, one thing which is always available, or which is always present in the stories, in the textual stories, is that there are desires, there are needs, People have across the globe we have similar kind of needs or desires,
Right.
and I think we have pain. We all of maybe like contexts are different. We all suffer. Maybe because of the
Universal.
yes, we all suffer maybe because of different reasons. Somebody suffers because they don't have money. Somebody suffers because they have so much of money, and it gives them suffering in a different way. There are people who get killed because of nothing else but for their caste, and there are people who get killed for various reasons. So but then when we read, we basically try to adapt to that our craving for empathy with each other, because as a human being, we there is an innate desire in us to connect with other people,
Yes.
people
Sure.
with whom we think they are alike. And when we say people who are alike, they can be from anybody, like from they can belong to any caste, color, or gender or anything. But then
Yes.
it is the caste is there, and it has created a mechanism which has protected or prohibited us from communicating with each other, talking with each other, mixing with each other. You know,
Can I ask you?
yeah.
Can I ask you that speaking of this, this connection and this need to connect, do you think today with social media, and the fact that everybody can actually broadcast their story, tell their story, use the medium relatively inexpensively, as long as you have a connection, do you think it's playing its own role in erasing sort of caste distinctions among young people? And do you think it's even for you, social media has played a positive role as a publisher and enable and in ways to be able to fund? And the second part of this question is that I would like you to talk about your unique sort of fundraising strategy, which I think is a mix of having the right people connect with what you're doing and the crowdfunding sort of mechanism that has existed. So if you can just take that.
Yes, it is very interesting time in which I think we are living in, because it was not possible. Just imagine some 10 years back, there was no medium, no means for me to connect with the
Yes.
world. Although internet was there since 90s, but then it was not within the reach of people like me. Now, when I say that, basically, just for an example, if I have something in my mind and I just share it with the world, let's say through Facebook or whatever social media platform I use, it like the people who are interested in that, people who empathize with that, people who think that it is important,
Yes.
they become our ally. I remember that when I requested for seed fund, when I appealed to the people for that. Now, when I appeal to the people,
Sorry, the seed fund, if you can explain that, the seed fund uh, for your publication.
yes.
All right.
So I appealed to the people for seed fund for Panthers for publication, because I have been running it for from 2016 to 2020. I have been running the way I have been doing that, like just
Yes.
meeting people, selling them books or in whatever little way. But pandemic made us stop for at least a year, and when people like me who do not have neither have social capital nor the capital in a financial way, and I'm just one of the people who had been affected by the pandemic in a different way. But then there are millions of stories. So my story is that, like, when you go without selling any book, or without selling any book, or for months you think that like you are losing on to something, but this is something a kind of a dream for me. So I thought of let us appeal to the people, I don't know how many people would help, how they help, but just I wanted to. This is what I have and I intend to do with books, and this is the story I publish. So I just appeal to the people. I know my position. I have written a small note, and I just started putting it on
On
one website
Facebook
called
and
Velivada, then Facebook, then my
yeah.
Instagram, and then people shared. So I don't know who these people are. Basically, I cannot. I know when they have seed funded in their whatever
You don't
in their
personally know them.
capacities, but
You,
in
yeah,
personally.
yeah,
So the connection was I wanted to publish books, and there are people in the world in the different society in different territories whose language I don't know,
yeah.
whom I have never talked, but they think that books should be published, and this is the same thing I also think. Now
Connection to the idea.
connection to the idea. So I just put it on social media basically. And before social media, we do not have this space where we can do these such things. So
Yes.
and these people are from various castes, various languages, various genders, various locations, class.
It doesn't
Some people
matter.
were
It doesn't matter.
they helped in their capacities. Some people they shared it, and they shared it among their friends, colleagues, families. So every kind of help counted, and I was able to actually raise the seed fund with which I can go on for 2.5 years. So that has given me a confidence that in next 2.5 years I will make myself sustain, and then I will the kind of trust people show, the the help they have given, it had made me able to continue with my journey. And then I also made sure that in these 2.5 years I will also be making sure that Panther's Paw will continue for years to come. And
Absolutely. And, some of us who followed Panthers for, it just felt like such a success to see that you were able to raise the seed fund. And also, it kind of gives hope that the world in some ways is changing. Perhaps not as rapidly as we would like it to. And certainly, I'm sure there are many, many things that, need to be improved and need attention. But somehow, even through some other volunteering efforts and all of that, I've seen the power of just people coming together, right? And no one really has to personally know, the person who's running the cause or has something. It's just that match of ideology, right?
yes.
And in that context, I want to ask you something which, of course, in Savarna circles and maybe among people who consider themselves on the path of opening their eyes and waking up to things that perhaps in our homes, growing up, we never noticed. Small things like different glasses for the house help, different plates for the house help, different entrance, the all these small things that are so normalized in many Indian homes. And when you grow up, we didn't notice these things, but there are people who are now realizing, we're reading, we're learning. However, this being an ally, and we've spoken about this, being an ally is a conflicted space in some ways, because there are many questions about passing the mic, sharing the stage. How are you a good ally? Is an ally necessarily someone who who first looks at what is happening in their own home before you start talking about things outside? And what is the balance? So I would love your thoughts on, firstly, who is a good ally? What are the qualities of a good ally? And in your experience, where are the opportunities for people, for Savarnas, who actually genuinely may want to be good allies, but are also a little bit scared or hesitant of maybe the the ridicule or the criticism if they do something wrong or they make a wrong statement or a wrong step. Just your thoughts would be very helpful.
So yes, this is very basically actually this is a critical question, and it needs a lot of debate or dialogue on this
Yes.
particular. But then, whatever little experience I have about the social movement I have been part of, and the kind of activities I do, where which is basically which this question is very much valid and very much relevant, and it is going to be relevant because in caste society, sickness is normalized. When you go to out when you go to Western countries where also there are class hierarchy, racial hierarchies, and
Yes.
hegemonies and all. But then when you say that for your house help you have a different door and
Right.
a different cup or the
These are
different
normalized.
glass. So this is a sickness. The Western people call this a sickness, and basically it is a sickness. So sickness is normalized in Indian society. Now, when the question comes to alliance, like who can be the ally, when it comes to caste discourse or anti-caste discourse, it's always people always make a binary, one binary, and then they talk about caste as if they are done with that. Like there are things Brahminical and there are non-Brahminical things. Okay, then there is Dalit literature and there is Indian literature. So, but it is not like that. There are hundreds of castes, right? Hundreds of thousands of castes about which we don't know. In our lifetime, we don't even know beyond 10 to 15 castes, the name of it. We don't even
Yes,
know the subcaste name within our caste.
this is
You
true.
know, so when we don't know about our world, why we are talking or dialoguing with other people and trying to give the impression that see I am the messiah of this anti-caste discourse, or I
Mm.
am the someone who can give you the mic and become good ally or something like that. We don't even know our world because we are in India. One thing is always missing from the ages is the intellectual honesty. Now,
Intellectual honesty.
honesty. Indians are not intellectually honest people, and I so far I have a very like my this quotation or this thought of Baba Sahib has not been refuted in many ways. I'm actually, I would be happy if somebody can refute it, but Indians are not intellectually honest people.
But if you look at our education system, if there is so much rote learning where you're just memorizing things and doing an exam and moving on to the next grade, and any sort of criticism or any sort of debate is not encouraged, how are people going to get critical thinking? How are they going to imbibe these qualities of critical thinking?
Basically, education has opened for Dalit Bahujan masses after colonizers come. Colonizers, Britishers, they had their own needs. So that is the reason they have given pen and paper to Dalit Bahujan people. They recruited them to the army, made them butler, and because they wanted to give them some skills so that their work will become easy. But while doing that, Dalit Bahujan got an education which they did not get before Britishers.
Right.
In Gurukul system, in Brahminical society, Dalit Bahujans are not supposed to get education. So when we say rot system, it is still a kind of a better thing for Dalit Bahujan because they did not have anything before Britishers. And now when Britishers have gone, all the institutions you say from IIT to IIM to Navodaya, everybody like who were at the position of decision making. Why? Obviously, they were not Dalit Bahujans. They were like Brahmin, Kshatriyas, Kayas. They were handling this position of education, the power position. So they did not think of like changing the modes of syllabus. Instead, what they did is for their children, they or for their descendants, they have chose to send them abroad and get them educated
Right,
there, and then
right.
talk about Indian system here. So this is it's a kind of a circus which has been going on after 47. So intellectual honesty has nothing to do with the school. It has nothing to do with
Where
the
do
school.
you think then it can be inculcated? If you say Indians don't have intellectual, is it through debate? Is it through reading? Is it through being honest and introspecting on what are the things that we don't think about or talk about?
I think it starts when we do not attempt to hide ourselves who we are. The first thing we should know who we are, basically, genealogically. Now it's not difficult to see someone who is white or who is black or who is Asian, as in like a Mongol race or something like, because it is apparent.
Right.
It's a racial distinction. But caste, you can't know until and unless two people talk, right? Until and unless two people, that is what I'm saying. In India, even now, even today, the people, the privileged people or the non-privileged people or Brahmins, Savarna, Kshatriya, Dalit, Bahujan, Vaishya, all the things, their intimate spaces are caste spaces. Their intimate spaces are caste spaces. In that spaces, no other caste person of any gender is allowed. Hardly, there may be some excuses, there may be some like exceptions, sorry, but then these exceptions are not norm. What is
Yes.
norm is which is widely practiced. You know the that the magic of democracy is that it brings you together. Let us say then when after the constitution has been implemented, it has become a kind of a Dalit, Bahujan, OBCs, Kaya, Kshatriya, they can all study in one college with their
Right.
choice. If he wants to study, she wants to study, people from different genders, men, women, they can apply. There is because under the constitution, everybody is equal and everybody has a right to apply for that. So in these educational spaces where constitution has brought a kind of initiated a kind of a democracy, so people from various caste or genders, they at least they became able to come together and share one common space. Now there are differences among them at the level of ideas, at the level of life they live, and the life they have back in their home. When they go
Mm.
back, they have different kinds of life, but then
This is very true.
in
Yes.
school and colleges they at least get to share one common space. There are also hierarchies, but then this is the beauty of democracy, that
Yes.
it gives you a chance to be a better human being. Now, when two people, one say Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Kayas, whoever with privileges, and people from all Dalit Bahujan background, first time learners, first generation of learners, they come together. Now, who should behave in a what way? You know, if you use your privilege and the social capital to bully the marginalized people, then you fail to understand democracy. Then Savarnas and Kshatriyas, or like all the privileged castes, the Brahminical caste, they are the failure for democracy, not the Dalit Bahujans. So
Right.
democracy is not about the electoral failure, which is posited, or which is like people arguing in a political discourse that, oh, because of Dalit Bahujan voters we have got this kind of corrupt leaders or something. No, 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 no. Leaders are shaped, or they grow up in a caste, they inherit caste, and no matter they become a leader in the democracy, they still practice their caste values. So it is people who control these democratic, or who had a dominance over the democratic spaces, they
Right.
were the failures for democracy. So I mean, this. again, when we go back to the question of ally, who can be the ally and who is a good ally, I think
Yes.
there is we cannot create binaries in terms of alliance. What we say is, first thing is that there should be intellectual honesty that okay, this is me, like I am privileged, okay, I am privileged and this is what I have so far.
Recognition.
Yes, and this is what, like, this is the kind of life I have been. But now,
Yes.
how we can proceed further, by which we can share something in a more equitable way, you know where we can dialogue more openly, more honestly.
Yogesh, like how for instance, in wherever there has been violent sort of clashes between historical, inequalities, there is this whole truth and reconciliation process that, a lot has been written about, and the merits of that, and how that can actually help people move forward, whether in South Africa or even here in Australia or in Canada. And one of the basic things of that is a historical acceptance. So, what you're talking about, intellectual honesty, like the historical acceptance of the fact that today where I am is because of certain factors that I may not see it, but it exists. All the layers and layers and layers of privilege and all the layers of oppression that today have created my reality versus someone else's reality. So, for instance, in this, in re-evolution, the story that you had in Flowers on the Grave of Caste, um, there are so many horrific things that happen in that story, right? Because of these caste dynamics. But the way you have written about them is extremely matter of fact, without adding any excessive emotional color to it, right? But when someone, so for you, the way it is presented is this is reality, right? But there is so much defensiveness and so much lack of, as you say, intellectual honesty or historical acceptance, that there is a vast majority of people who say caste is a thing of the past. In my city, in Bombay, in Kolkata, in Delhi, everybody is the same. There is no caste. Maybe it was there many years ago, but I don't practice caste. I am caste blind. You hear these terms a lot. And when I compare that to something in the book and what you're talking about and the reality, it's like they're two different worlds. And how does someone who thinks they are caste blind, right? And who thinks that it doesn't exist anymore. So, is it the books? Is it dialogue? Is it because you said these are the non-violent, most peaceful ways in which things can move forward, right?
Yes.
Um, but they say like someone who's pretending, you cannot wake up someone who's pretending to be asleep, right? So, what is the way around that?
I think this is something, this this understanding of, I think it's a global understanding that we cannot wake up somebody who's pretending to sleep. A person who is actually in sleep can be woken up,
Yes.
can be disturbed from the sleep. But people, because that pretension is a deliberate thing, it's a choice, it's a politics. I don't want to wake up to these realities because I'm not affected by it, right? But
Yes.
then now you are not affected by it and it is not a part of you. It is because you do not know. You do not know the history of who you are, right?
Hmm.
People in caste society, they are interconnected in a way that the violence is there, no, in that in caste society. It is a contribution of everybody. It is a contribution especially of those who are blind to who they are and what they are creating by their actions, by their rituals, by their religious dogmas.
Yes.
So we do not we don't interrogate ourselves. We Indians do not interrogate ourselves because we fear that when we do that, we are going to see ourselves in complete darkness. Because I
That
mean,
whole identity will crumble.
exactly, and that identity it's a means of somebody's survival, because like the people who are like not survival, sorry, but it is that particular identity for that particular community, which is a
Right.
matter of their privileges, which is the matter of their like their power, the hegemony.
Yes.
Now nobody wants to give up the power. No, if let us say I have some, for example, like if someday I have 100 acres of land and lots of money in bank, and then like just lavish life, like the things are there on my fingertips. Now, who wants to give up to that kind of a thing? It is about so it's about lot of things, like like when Savarna they study all these things, and then they go to foreign universities, and there they talk about India this and India that, India used to be great and all this. They know nothing about India. They
Hmm.
literally have no ideas about India. And
Like a
by some,
fantasy,
they
fantasy.
have complete fantasy because they have never stopped, they have never crossed the posh threshold of their caste capital. And of, as I said, that nobody wants to give up that power. And for us to acquire this thing is also to break the caste, because as a matter of fact, the caste system does not allow some communities to own wealth, some communities to own intellectual capital, social capital. So when people from all these marginalized communities they acquire this, no, it is a kind of an assertion, not to dominate somebody, but to show that how normal it is to have things by ourselves if we work on it, if we work hard, if it is our labor, if it is our honest labor, then we can have it. And by this way, we can say that the caste is an abnormal thing. Caste is something like it tells you do it. Caste tells you to do this, and you do opposite to that, and then you find that this world is totally different. So that is the reason I say that a lot of people like Savarnas, when they go to foreign university, they talk about India, they completely have different understanding of India. I
Yes.
mean,
I
they
agree with
completely talk
you.
something like they, and then there
What
are
they would like it to be, what they imagine
after,
it to be.
exactly. And after 2014 they have got some one figure to blame, but it is who you have created him. It is you who have created him. He does not become who he is in one day. It just
Yes.
now
They say
now
to get
you
the leaders
yeah,
we deserve.
now you are saying you are woke up, you are liberal because you are just cursing him. When you wake up, you curse him. Before sleep, you curse him, and if you are liberal because, like you say that he is not good. He is a product of the society. So after 2014, a lot of people become liberals and woke and all these things. But this problem has always been there. It's not 2014 or like 2019 14. It's always there. So, and for that matter, we need to understand a lot of things. Like we need to understand ourselves historically, not just today,
No, this is
right?
true. This is true, and there are. I suppose there are things that go back not just 1 or 2 decades, but obviously they go back millennia that have culminated into where we are today. But just to move on from that a little bit back to the books, I would love you to talk about who some of the authors are that you're publishing, some of the titles that we can look forward to. I know you and I also spoke about some women authors that
Yeah.
you have published, and I think there's another one coming. And I've been
Yes,
seeing your social media posts. There's an exciting new book as well,
yes.
the angle. So if you can talk about that a bit.
Yes, I like so far Panthers Pub Publication has produced 12 books. One is there in the print, so it will be printed in a week or maybe 10 days or something. So, like I have Panthers Pub Publication has published two women authors. One is Sangeeta Mule and another one is Tania Singh. Tanya Singh has written a very powerful poetry collection called Blue is the Color I Choose, and Sangeeta Mule has written a fiction based on the life of Savitri Bai Phule, which is called Savitri Bai and I. So it is for even young readers can
I
read that.
think
And
that one. I think, uh,
Savitri Bai Phule and I.
yes, yes, I have.
So
I read that one. It's such a good book. I want to show the cover. This is the one, right?
yes.
It's such a good
So
book. I really enjoyed this story. I would recommend it. Actually, when I read this book, I was thinking it should be in every college library, school and college library. It's
So
such a good
we we basically regularly send this book to people outside India. Like a lot of people from UK or US, they order it. So I mean,
book.
if
The
people
cover
in
is so gorgeous. The
yeah,
cover itself is so
cover,
beautiful.
yes, cover is a drawing by Malvika Raj, who is a Dalit
I think
artist,
it's
and
gorgeous.
she's very brilliant artist. So if like people in Australia, they need our books or something, so they can
Yes, me
always like
too. Please tell us
contact. Yeah,
how we
please
can
they
order books from here.
those who want it like like they can just approach me on Instagram. Like we have a page called Panthers for Publication on Instagram, and I believe that a lot of people use Instagram.
Yes,
So
and we will
just
share.
just drop me a message, Panthers for Publication. It's very simple. Just drop me a message because I respond to each and every message. That's my work. When people want
Yes,
book, I make sure that I deliver. So apart from this, I have like there are like authors, Javi Pawar, Loknath Ishwar, Sunil Auchar. Then I published some of the title by myself, like my own writings. I have there was like then we reprinted some of the titles, and now we are publishing the current book which we are publishing is called Affairs of Caste. It is by Sumit Samos. Sumit Samos is a Indian rapper. He was from JNU and now he's studying in Oxford University. And the book he had written it something coming from a very small unknown place from Odisha to Delhi, JNU, and then going to Oxford is a remarkable journey he had gone through. And this book is a testimony of like of how things have changed after social media. So those who want this book can, maybe we can do something like, I can just say like, if those who want can contact Nandini, and I will just send her
no,
like
absolutely.
lots
First,
of
I
books.
want my copy, which I always get whenever I can. So I will definitely want his copy, and maybe we can even have him on our show, which would be very
Yes,
interesting.
we can do if there is a possibility we can do one small program over this particular book when once it is launched.
Yes,
Maybe
absolutely. We'll definitely
maybe
be in touch.
yes,
And I would
maybe
love
next
to
week.
speak with some of your women authors as well. So we
Yes,
can connect separately on that. But
yes,
before we wrap up, Yogesh, I would love for you to read something. I know you're a poet as well, and while you say poetry is just something you do for the cause, right? And it's almost like you don't just do it to indulge yourself in some poetic forms, and it's but still there is something universal about poetry. and there's something quite beautiful. So I would love to hear something from you.
Yes, I can read from Blue is the color I choose. It is a poetry collection by Tanya Singh, as I said.
Sure.
Uh, I have published my poetry collection, but it's something I don't have right now, and it's okay. But this younger generation is like writing very powerful poetry, and we should always hear the voice of a Dalit woman who speaks in a way that we get to understand what basically India is for uh, what basically India is in today. So, I would like to uh, read one poem, if it is okay.
Please do. Please do.
I'm going to read one poem. It is called "Whispered Words." So Tanya Singh writes, Whispered Words is a title. She writes, when I was born, my mother whispered in my ears, the world is going to be cruel, sorry. I must have looked at her with eyes half shut, and may also have smiled the foolish, reasonless smile of an infant, lasting a few seconds, training me for life that smiles only last a few seconds. After 28 years of my life, my mother's words still ring in my head. Cruel, 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 cruel. In this breathless existence, I drag my body daily, puppeteered by a very scared mind, minding my distance from the metro doors and standing behind the yellow lines of life, falling more than walking, walking where I should be running, carrying the weight of my culture lace past tied to my ankles. In school, I learned the sport of high jump, but I can't jump high enough to cross over centuries of lagging behind. So I must live my perfectly inadequate life, reminded each day that I was born with a warning. The world is going to be cruel.
Powerful poem.
Yes, so I mean, this is the kind of voices we have coming from our community, and these are the young people. Sumit Samos is another young person who is going to be I am sure, very brilliant writer. And my job is to make all these from my side. I can make their stories available for the world, and in whatever way, whatever capacity I can do, I will continue to do that. And
Brilliant. Brilliant. You know,
I
really, I mean,
yes,
for young authors, to find a publisher who actually understands them and understands the challenges of actually sitting down and putting a book together and having someone as a mentor and a friend, that means the world to a writer. So for you
yes,
to be able to give that and to be fair, the publishing world is
yeah,
sometimes so unfair to the writer themselves, right? And the
yes, it is.
margins are
Yes,
ridiculous, and the payments are ridiculous, and
it's
um,
something we don't. I have been in publishing for almost 7 years now, and then I know that how it feels, no, like when your
yes,
story is not heard by the world with empathy, let alone it would be published or not. But then I had gone through the similar kind of experience, so I don't want it to be a part of people's life. So in my capacity, whoever writer, in whatever numbers I would be able to publish in the future, I would do that. And I will continue to do with my best of my capacity and my intention. So let us see how
absolutely.
far I can go. And then those people, those who are the listeners, the viewers, if they want our books, they can just drop a message to
Yes,
us
we
on
will.
Instagram. We are on Instagram called Panthers for Publication,
We
and
will also
that's
put it with this interview. We will also put the link there. And
yes.
thank you so
Thank you.
much. We've
Thank
had.
you, Nandini.
I think there's so much to talk about, and there are so many issues that need time and attention to discuss openly. So thank you. We've had the first round of discussions. Perhaps we'll have the second round whenever you have new books to talk about. And we wish you all the best. Wish all the authors in your fold the very best, and we look forward to the new books. I'll be sure to order them. And once again, from NRI Affairs and Pause with Nandini, thank you.
Thank you, Nandini, and thank you, Deepak, for giving me the opportunity. And see you soon. Thank you.